Relax, the keyboard is off, the press box is closed, but the mic is just getting warmed up as we welcome in a special guest that will have you on the edge of your seat. The Writer Extraordinaire stacks the pads this week with a double dose of thoughts on what the Flyers need to do. Welcome to the Hockey Writers Inc., the show where the writer is fresh off the presses and the ink is not dry. So join Lance and Steel as we bring you all the latest.
Hi guys, welcome back to another edition of the Hockey Writers Inc. I'm your host, Lance Green.
And I'm your co-host, SteelFlyers, and boy oh boy, have we got an awesome show lined up for you today. We got a special guest in the house, but before we get into that, first of all, we have to say a huge thank you to Jamie Bascow and the Flyers Nitty Gritty group for helping us to make Bleacher Reports once again, 18th week in a row. That gets the Hockey Writers Inc. salute.
All right.
Yeah, mucho apreciado for that, for sure. Sitting in with us, ladies and gentlemen, we got Isaiah from O B Puck. Holy smackers! Hey!
Hey,
How
gents.
you
How you
doing?
All right.
Yeah, man. How you doing? How's things going? How you feeling? And what's going on?
Well, except for the hockey team, everything's fine. The team itself, well,
Yeah.
not so good.
Yeah, we'll get into that. All right, Lance, how you doing, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. Good to see you both.
Yeah, man. Another great week down. Another great set of articles here by the Writer Extraordinaire. Oh man, I'll tell you what, uh, folks. Look, we're not going to sugarcoat it here, okay? Seriously, we're not. I mean, obviously, the name of the show is Buyers or Sellers, are the Flyers throwing in the towel. So I guess that pretty much reveals my cards here. Now, what I wanted to do here is get into some things. First of all, Lance, man, awesome articles this week. Really, really awesome articles. Both posted out on flyersnittygritty.com. The first article was just posted, or the first article that we're going to talk about was just posted today. Will the Flyers Inconsistencies cause them to be sellers? Man, really appreciate that. Can't say enough about that article, dude. Great stuff.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I thought that came out pretty well. Tried to get all my thoughts that are definitely swarming around in all our heads right now, I would think, on paper, and it turned out to be pretty good, I think.
I agree. I agree. And the other one that was just a mere couple of days ago that you posted on FlyersNittyGritty.com site as well. Some last-ditch efforts to try and salvage the Flyers defense before they have to throw in the towel on the season. So as you notice, that's kind of where I got the name of the episode. So that was another great
Uh,
article. Yeah,
I
very.
did notice that. I did
Yeah,
notice that.
yeah. Very poignant article there too. That you. So we're gonna. I'm gonna throw a curveball here because we have a special guest, Isaiah from O
Sure.
B Puckcast, and all his great work. And we're gonna talk Flyers, and we're just gonna get right into the nitty gritty of it, if I can go there. Okay, Lance. These both of these articles that you've written pinpoint exactly what this team needs to do right now. We're not talking about trade deadline. We're not talking about off season. We're talking about right now. Okay, so what I wanted to do was I wanted to base the questions that I'm going to pose to both of you guys based off of these two articles. Okay. Now I know this is kind of a little bit cheating here, Isaiah, where you may not have read these, but that's okay because based off of all the information that you've done on all the shows that you do and all the great work that you do, man, I have no doubts that you'll be able to fly just perfectly with where we're going on this, man. We like to bring you in because you definitely are preaching to the choir here, brother. And we definitely agree with a lot of the things that you say and how you feel about the team and what you want to do with the team. Okay, so I'm gonna fire some questions off to both of you guys and get you guys' opinions on some things. Okay. All right. Are you ready, Isaiah? You ready to go?
You got it. You
All
got
right,
it.
man.
Shoot.
Shoot. All right. I continually, me personally, since being an amateur observationist, I see the same lineup going in every single night with minor changes to where a player is in the lineup, not necessarily a change in the players. Isaiah, can you tell me, am I seeing things? Because it's not working. They keep putting in the same players and the same guys, and it's not working. And they just shift them around a little bit, or do you think I'm a little bit off base here?
No, it's the old expression, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. That's what this is. It's a fiasco, and without giving away anything, I mean, tonight is the continuation of that. I just got a glimpse of that. So if you saw me jump up a little bit, I couldn't resist. But it's a disgrace. 9-0, 6-1, and then what's going on versus the Rangers. The AV has no answers. AV has no answers because I think he wasn't given the improvements by Chuck Fletcher in the offseason. And frankly, I think AV is at a loss, and his coaching staff really hasn't done the best job adjusting. But I think really you have to look at the players, the mix of the players, the things that were revealed in the bubble. And then you come to a place in your mind, you say, you know what? What has this team been since Hextall took over in 2014? And what are they now? They're younger, they have more promise, but are they really? What was the anomaly? The anomaly was that period after like February into March when everybody said, boy, it's a shame that they had to stop playing because they were really among the best teams in the league. It was actually more like mid-January on until they had to stop. But that before that, they weren't very good. Okay, so you thought, well, maybe it's the coach. It's a new coach. He has to get established. No, what we've seen this year is they are really have made glacial progress, most of that with young kids that are coming on, most of whom who have either stagnated or regressed, with the exception of Farabee. And you have the same veterans, same guys, the same four people. JBR, okay, he had a little hiatus there in Toronto. The Couturier, who's their best player. And then you have Giroux and Voracek. Okay, they're taking up X amount of the cap, except for Couturier, who's on a value deal. So what do you do? What do you go? What do you look at if you're Chuck Fletcher? You have a defense that's falling apart without a veteran leader, and you have a lot of sameness up front, a lot of pass-first players who don't really mesh well together, who are very soft. Unfortunately, that came out in the playoffs, as we saw Oscar Lindblom feeling like he was the only guy who could give pushback, and a guy who's not even completely recovered from a cancer treatment feels like he has to start fighting. Nolan Patrick comes to Claude Giroux's aid in the Madison Square Garden. But wait, we don't want him fighting because he's got a glass jaw. I mean, nothing against him, but he's coming off a migraine syndrome. It's a mess. It's a mishmash. It has failed. The Hextall project from 2014 that Chuck Fletcher came in to try and salvage and accelerate has failed. It is now time to move forward with a different idea. And that message should have been set starting yesterday. And I said it on our show. I hope I'm not running on too long here.
No, dude, no.
I said it on the show yesterday.
Yep.
Instead of what we got yesterday, which was like some half-truths, some evasion, and just flat-out claptrap, useless talk. What we should have got was, look, listen, I've been here for X amount of time. I'm aware of what happened before. I have to take it all on balance. It simply isn't good enough. We are in a circumstance right now where we are evaluating how we're going to proceed. Guys should be playing for jobs, and all I can tell the fans is stay tuned.
Wow. Gosh. Hey, Lance. Go.
Yeah. Definitely some of those points are things that we've been beating home at the same token. You know, it's this team, it has the wrong. And I think the one thing that Chuck Fletcher did say was that he didn't bring in that guy to replace Niskanen like he should have. That was the one comment I saw that he said, like, I dropped the ball on that.
Yeah.
But now what are you going to do to to change that. With these two articles I laid out, I basically laid them out as two different options. Whether this team was going to get their crap together and really push forward and be those buyers that Chuck Fletcher swears they should be, and I'm starting to disbelieve him there with the way the team keeps having these inconsistencies, as I said in my other article lately, that you can go out there and beat a team one game by a goal or two, but play them a night or two later and lose to them 9-zip. Like, inconsistencies in play. They're not physical. There's nobody to stand up. Like he said, Lindblom has to stand up, and somebody else did tonight as well. But Patrick has to try to stand up. I don't want to give away too much, but somebody did as well tonight earlier on, and none of these players are capable of doing it on that level. I don't think the coaching staff likes physicality too much, and that's a problem.
I think that's a big point right there.
I think, and it was proven by certain players that I mentioned in previous articles that even tuned in and saw my article and verified that.
Yeah.
So with that same token, I do think they need to do a little bit of both. Yes, I think they need to sell. I think they need to blow up this team, and I think that no Flyers fan is going to say that didn't need to be done at this point. Like Isaiah said, we're looking at a long-term project here, and there's a lot of pass-first guys. There's a lot of pass-first guys with Drew and Voracek that are getting paid a lot of money, but there's nobody to bang that puck home when you need a goal. Farabee is playing out of his mind, and that's great progression, but that's the only guy out there that's really progressing. Everybody else has kind of taken a step back since the playoffs or even before that. And I think that a big change needs to happen. I just don't know if it's going to happen at this trade deadline with a flat cap and everybody's scared of the expansion draft. I think after that happens, I think you see a lot of contracts being moved at that point, but everybody's kind of unaware of what's really going to happen this offseason and, don't really want to shell out the money to do so. And I don't know. I think that the Flyers should sell key players. Like I said, maybe a Brian Elliott right now. If the season's going to be a crapshoot that it looks like it's going to be, Brian Elliott has been a strong point. And you look at what Anton Khudobin did in Dallas when their main guy went down. He stepped up and took them all the way to the Cup Finals. All right. So that role is pretty important. And you could probably get somebody. He's 35 years old now. I think we need to move past him anyway. Carter Hart's a big boy now. He needs to, figure stuff out on his own. He needs to put on the big boy pants if he wants to get paid like a top-tier goaltender, and I don't foresee that.
All right. I got a little bit of an objection on that part when you get a chance.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the defense has been horrible. Obviously, we're playing people out of position. We bring back Braun and bring in Gustafsson and expect them to play on the top tier with Provorov. That you shouldn't be expecting Braun to do that at his stage of his career. I didn't really want him back on this team anyway, but if you felt the need, he needed to come back in the same point that he was and be a third pairing defenseman. So there's a lot of, or worse. But there's just a lot of guys that they could get rid of. I would, at this point, get rid of Nolan Patrick. He's 22 years old, but I'm sorry that you look at what other number 2 overall picks have been doing that are in the league right now, and their numbers blow his out of the water. Yeah. I don't think it's the right fit here. A lot of things with Chuck Fletcher has just sat idle, mostly with Ron Hextall's team, and he hasn't done anything, like Isaiah said, to better this team in a sense for more than just a year or two. I want to see that big tier guy. If we're going to be buyers, like he says we're going to be, I want to be buyers in the same token that brings back players for a considerable amount of years, that brings in a first tier top pairing defenseman or something that is going to be here for years to come. That is going to work towards fixing this team long term, not just a rental player for a no shot that we have in the playoffs right now. So that's kind of where I'm at. We can move on to another question. I could go on all night, as I'm sure Isaiah could.
Okay. Well, I would actually like to say this to both of your points. You can't. It's like we keep saying. It's like I made the observation, and Isaiah made the observation, and Lance has made the observation, not only in his articles, but Isaiah, you guys at O B Puckcast have said it on numerous occasions on many of your shows and through many of the stuff that you guys have done. And Lance, you've written about this subject so many times. The thing of it is this. I don't understand how a general manager has done absolutely as little as he can to better this team, and it seems like he's done a lot of things to try to band-aid things. Like it almost feels like Clark is running the show again, where we're betting the farm to bring that one guy who can get us over the hump. I mean, it just kind of it just seems like look, I've said it before, the Gustafson and the Braun was a knee-jerk reaction that should have never happened. That was a waste of $4.5, $5, $6 million. Okay, that was a big, huge waste. Letting Friedman walk was a waste. Okay, putting Myers or Moran at forward was a waste. Okay, all of these moves are done by the general manager. Okay, I just find it hard to believe that all the things that he's done, and then he comes out and says the things that he said in the press conference, and there's no rhyme or reason to match what he said to what he's done. He hasn't done enough to make this team better, not just now, but in the future. I'm not saying he's mortgaging the farm, but he's continuing on what Ron Hextall did, was bringing in a team full of Danny Briers. Now, it's great to have guys that are 5'8", that are great passers, but we need guys that are 6 foot, 200 pounds, that can slam bodies and score and shoot the freaking puck. You guys have both said it. Everybody on this team is a bunch of passers. We don't have any finishers. We don't have any shooters. We don't have anybody that does those things. And how can you expect to put together a team when you keep, as Isaiah said before, you keep this core group of people together that continue to do the same thing and not get any better year after year after year, and you just keep trying to plug in little pieces of veterans and little pieces of rookies in here and there to help try to, perpetuate those four guys along, and it's just not working. Okay, so.
But I'll take Danny Briere about now. He had a great shot.
Okay. I'd take him at his age right now. What are you talking about?
Size. What I mean by that is the size. Okay, Danny Briere is not very big. I mean, he's fast, but he's not going to be the guy that's going to slam you up against the boards. He's not going to be the guy that's going to drop the gloves and stick up for somebody. You know what I'm saying?
No, but you only need so many of those guys.
Right.
And I want.
But we don't have any.
I want guys that can play as well. We talked about on our O&B show a guy like Tyler Bertuzzi, who is not a great defensive player, but his intangibles kind of outweigh that. And he's still going to get you 20, 25 goals. Players like that, two-way guys. Even now, someone like Antoine Roussel, who gives you a lot of pushback on a fourth line. Even though he's not a great player analytically, he's tough to play against. A player like Lawson Krause.
That's my favorite player in the NHL right now. I love that kid.
He's not a high IQ player. He's an F9-10, but he makes up for it with effort. Yeah, and not only that, he plays in a lot of different situations. Again, he's not a great 5-on-5 player, but you're not going to see Scott Lawton getting ragdolled by a Buffalo Sabre when you have a couple of guys. Oh, you only need a couple of them. Look, no one wants to bring back the bullies, but the Flyers are the anti-bullies.
Exactly.
And I can't help but think, and Lance, maybe you're thinking about this as well. It's 2011. It's the Stanley Cup Finals, and Vancouver, who had a better team than the Boston Bruins, had more skill. They had things going their way. And what was like one of the turning points? It was that moment when Marchand was pushing around. I think he punched one of Sedin's.
The Deans, yes.
And what was the response?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Who's the coach?
This.
Who's
Yes.
the coach of that team?
Yes.
And look, I like Elaine, and he brought the Rangers to the finals as well. Now the better team won that final. Okay, all I'm saying is, and even Elaine mentioned that when he mentioned Sam Moran and moving him to forward, and at least in his defense, and I think this was Lappy's idea actually. Lappy initiated the discussion, like what are we going to do with Sam? They were probably in a big boardroom, like, what the bleep are we going to do about Sam? He's a great kid. We all love him. We're not sure he's an NHL player. Well, why don't we try him at forward? We could use his toughness. We saw that versus the Islanders and even against the Canadians.
I think,
putting that aside,
yeah.
I think that we had a plan which we articulated on our show yesterday, and that was, and we talked about it.
Yes.
And it's just, it dovetailed. We talked about it also with Jason Martinez on our prior show, episode 109 of O B Puckcast. And wouldn't you know, Bill Meltzer comes out with like a 10 or 12 tweet thread about what the Flyers can do. What are the possibilities? And it includes looking back to 06, 07 and saying, listen, let's buy a little with some players that send a message that we're changing course here. We're making a course correction.
Yeah.
But also sell some high on some guys. You mentioned Elliott. Now, I don't think Elliott can reach the heights of Kudobin. You rely on him a lot, it'll burn you. We saw that a couple games ago. But still, I don't mind. I don't care about short term. Okay. We need a fundamental change. Right. But one thing I'll disagree with, I don't think this is a long-term rebuild. I think it could be a retool because you have a lot of guys that are on the cusp.
Okay. Perfect segue, because what the next question I want to ask you guys is this. Now, Chuck Fletcher is fired, let go, whatever the case is. You are now the general manager of the Philadelphia Flyers. Okay? So, Lance, we'll start with you first. What's the first move you make if you are suddenly now the general manager of the Philadelphia Flyers tomorrow morning?
I go out there and get a physical forward. My favorite is Lawson Krause. I love that kid. He plays awesome. I go out there and get a number one pairing defenseman right out the gate. I break up this at this point. I think Giroux retires as a Flyer, and that's all well and good. But then you get rid of Jake. I think a way that you could possibly do that right now, you could look at Anaheim and get Getzlaf in a trade, same money, and pay Anaheim a draft pick or something just to free yourself of the money for them to take him for another season after that, and have that money to go out and spend on somebody shooter like Johnny Hockey when he hits free agency. I don't like that size. I want to get more size. I want to get more physicality. Like, Isaiah said, you don't want a whole team of bruisers, but we don't have any. So I think you get one on the back end. Any of my articles you can look at, there's a bunch of different guys I suggested on defense. There's a bunch of different.
Your first move would be to bring in Crowley, right?
Yep, I think him. I think you look at some Buffalo Krause, or something, right? Like Lawson Krause. Yeah,
Krause, sorry, I'm sorry.
I like
my mistake.
Yep. Okay. I like Krause. I think that physical forward, and I think you go for a physical defenseman as well, but one that can play a first line pairing.
Okay. So, Isaiah, what would be the first thing? And you are now handed the keys to the kingdom. You're now the general manager of the Philadelphia Flyers, the dream job. What's the first move you make tomorrow morning?
Take my buyout and do something else. No, but
just sign a contract to be the. Okay.
It's a tough job, and there's a flat cap. There are reasonable concerns about expansion and losing players unnecessarily. But what you first have to do is decide who you want to move forward with that's currently on the roster. And if you look at the Flyers right now, players that likely are not going to be here, and I'm looking at my computer here, so excuse me for looking away.
No.
But if you survey this roster, look, it's going to be tough to move Claude Giroux. I don't think it's necessarily a productive exercise. I wouldn't mind having a conversation and telling him that we are going to change direction and giving him the option. He has a full no move clause. So it's not like, he can be traded without his consent. But you can count on the expansion process to probably help you shed either Gus Despair or more than likely someone like JVR. We were talking to Jason Martinez about that. Mm-hmm. And he thinks that someone like Ron Francis, the GM out there, would like JVR. And he only has 2 more years after this year, and he's having his best year, maybe two-way wise this year. So he's showing well. And even when he doesn't play well, the other night he got 2 assists. So I think you have to go through that process. Okay. And you have to decide whether you want to keep Scott Lawton. I would say your keepers are Lindblom. For now, I would say Provorov, unless I got blown away. And Carter Hart. Now, mentioning Carter Hart, I want to get back to that just because you referenced that. Look, Carter Hart, they didn't do any favors when they brought him in. He had 18 games in the AHL. Compare that with someone who was taken at a similar point in the draft in 2014. Thatcher Demko had like 90 games of AHL experience. Yep. That's what you call grooming a player. Plus, they probably have the best goalie coach in the league. Was it Ian Clark out there? And it meant they're a goalie factory. This is somebody who built back up Jakob Markstrom, and then they moved to Demko. Had a good playoff last year. Started off a little slow. His numbers are creeping up, and he's doing a better job. Carter Hart didn't have that. He got thrown into it, and I think what we're seeing now is Carter Hart, just like any other player who I think was rushed, kind of get into some bad habits, and he's like the boxer that learned how to be a gate attraction by trading with the other fighters, and then he becomes a boxer. Now, I'm not going to take all these shots, but when you hit him, he gets back into the same old bad habits. And Steve Alliquette was talking about something, and he's the ex-coach, ex-backup goalie of the Rangers. He has his own site that I forget the name of it. If it's off the top of your head, feel free to interrupt. And he does a lot of breakdowns and analytics. And he says that Carter Hart has a particular go-to bad habit. And this is the type of stuff that happens with younger players. He doesn't have a chance to practice. So I think it's a little tough to say big boy pants, because the big boy pants crew to me are guys like JVR, Jake, and G. Okay. And you could probably put Provy in that basket as well.
Okay.
And so I think you probably have to take a look at getting a better backup next year as part of your plan. So I'm going to get one of the 4 or 5 most important players on any team, and that is a first pairing defenseman. Okay. I could wait to the UFA and try to get in on the bidding on Doug Hamilton. Okay. We have the museums here, if you know that joke. So it shouldn't be an issue. Or we could try and swing a trade for someone who's under control, like Ryan Ellis. He's a little small. He's not going to have the snarl of somebody like Ekholm, but he's under control for another 5 years. So he's 30. Yeah. So these are the first things you need to do, and you have to work around expansion and decide whether, if you get a guy like Ellis, do you want to try and trade Sandheim to go get a forward and let go of somebody else and start putting the pieces together as you move forward with the new era of Flyers hockey.
To one point on that, I think I'm kind of working on a rough draft on an article right now, and I think Carter Hart. I'm seeing a lot of comparisons to a young Steve Mason. Coming out of Columbus, he was supposed to be the guy. And this big guy, like Carter Hart won every single thing you could win. even from age 15 or 16, championships at every single level. And he didn't know how to lose. He was that good that his talent put him above all that. But now, similar incidences with Carter Hart's going through now. Columbus was a crap team back then, and he was thrown into it a little earlier than expected as well. And he developed really bad habits as well that he didn't make for when he was winning a gold medal for Team Canada at the World Juniors. So both players, are very similar in my mind. Again, I'm a goalie. I studied goalies, and I see, a horrible glove hand by Carter Hart this year, and it was snagging pucks last year, and
Agreed.
I see him going down way too early to counteract these plays and stuff where he was staying up and maybe looking around a little bit more, trying to see the puck taking up more space in the net. So I think, Isaiah brings up a good point there. He's developing some very bad habits because he's trying to overcompensate for things there.
Yes.
Do I think he's, needs to be traded away like Mason was? No, he's far too young.
Okay.
We need to get the people in place to kind of give him that comfort again that he had when Niskanen was here, along with Provorov, and bring some sort of, normalcy back to his game, so he doesn't go out there and just try to do it all in a sense.
Okay. One thing about, unlike Steve Mason, Carter Hart is not a prima donna. And, that's really important. He has a much better attitude and mental outlook. And he's got, right. And if he overcame some of his bad habits with some good coaching, I have full faith that Carter Hart can get there.
Okay.
I think so, but I wonder the test and the fortitude of Carter Hart, because he's an overly nice guy,
and he's younger.
And this town can eat you up, as we've seen in, with the Eagles and everything else. Like, Carson Wentz is a very nice guy, and, he didn't have a line and all that stuff this year, and he kind of just let somebody coming in. I think playing Elliott so much could hurt Carter Hart too. I think he needs to be thrown in there and just get him in there and let him right himself and let him get a groove back. I mean, I'm a goalie. Like, I hated sitting games. Yeah. All right. If I came back and I got shelled by one of the best teams in the league, I wanted to be back in there the next night.
Yeah.
To get it going and get myself, focused back to where I knew I could be. And I think Carter Hart's, I don't know if he has that fortitude to survive this town. Okay. And that scares me a little bit. And I hope that Philly lets this kid, go for this season and hopefully get some defense in real soon to help him along.
We had Kevin Woodley on last year, and he's like one of the go-to guys for goaltending internationally. And I think the lack of practice time is really hurting him
big time,
more than most players, because the method that he uses with this puck tracking and all this type of stuff, which is more commonplace than it was maybe 5-6 years ago.
Sure.
It really relies on pulling the guy who has bad habits out of the lineup, coaching him up, instead of letting those habits get ingrained.
And fester.
And they don't have that luxury. And that speaks again back to my original point about rushing him along. But I think all these things kind of dovetail. I just thought I'd mention that.
All right. So now, as the general manager, I think the first thing I would do would be to sit down with Giroux and have the conversation with him and say, look, we're sorry that we wasted 13 years of your career. If you want to go to a contender, pick. We'll make it happen. Okay? Because I honestly think that I think that needs to happen. Okay? And the reason why I'm saying that is because we need a leader in the locker room that's not afraid to speak. Now, look, I'm not in the locker room, and I have never been in the locker room. I know, Lance, you can speak of that a little bit. I know you've been in the locker room, but I believe that a team like the Flyers needs maybe a different set of coaching, because this team thrives on physicality and falters on non-physicality. I think you need to have a conversation with the entire staff and be like, look, we're going in a different direction. Okay? And a lot of people that are here now ain't going to be here tomorrow. And I think you just need to and start not you don't need to start over, but some things need to be there's a different culture needs to happen on this team. The same, and Isaiah, you pointed out in your show with the 5-on-5, and we've talked about it, Lance, on our show, the Hockey Writers Inc., numerous times. The same core group of guys continues to lose, and all we do is keep building on this losing tradition. So why are we wasting time, money, and effort on these losers? Why not get what we can for them, picks, whatever, get some salary cap, and bring some guys in here that can help this team? Just like Isaiah said, just like Lance said, not just for today, but for tomorrow and for years to come. They need new leadership in this building, okay? You can't keep going down the same road and using the same, doing this. It's like that whole, the Freud thing, where if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, you keep putting the same players in every night, you just rotate them around and you expect a different result, but still the same players. It doesn't matter. It's still Braun, it's still Gustafsson, it's still these dumb players that can't do what they're supposed to do. You're putting them in the wrong position to not win. You're not setting the team up for success. You clamor for things that you want, but yet you don't do it. You want a physical guy, but yet you don't you bring physical people in here to be physical, and then you don't let them be physical. Nate Thompson skates away. Grant skates away. Yeah. Why is Lindblom sticking up for people? Why is Nolan Patrick sticking up for people? I also agree. Nolan Patrick, been a slice. Dude, look, we tried. You need a new environment, because you can be supportive of a player, but I think he's in that spot where he's not going to get any better, because the Flyers are still kind of treating him like,
kid gloves.
yes. Okay, and so it's time for him to move on and get what you can from him. I think it's time that you talk to G and be like, who do you want to go to, buddy? Can we make it happen?
I think you had it right. You go to G, but not to apologize to him and to say we wasted your career. I think you go to him and say, it's you wear that C. I want to see the effort out of you. It goes through him. We have a very young core, and it goes through the players, the veteran players like him. Okay. What did the team do all those years ago when the Flyers were playing the Penguins, and he came out there and annihilated Sidney Crosby? The team bit into it and took off and played behind that, and we won. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what these veteran players should be expected to do. But that's my topic on that. But let me pose a question here.
Yeah.
Has AV lost the locker room? And here's my point on this and what I'm thinking. Let me get your guys' point of view on this. Okay. After TK was benched, he was on a near point per game pace, but AV benched him. Drew, if you remember, in a post-game press conference, said, like, basically, he didn't appreciate it. He didn't know why he did it. And since then, the Flyers have been on a really, really rocky road. So let me start with you, Isaiah, and what do you think about that? Just throwing that out there.
Well, how many coaches can a team go through? That's the problem since 2013. My buddy Anthony DeMarco yesterday thought that Lavi got fired too soon. I disagree with that. I thought at the time he was a dead man walking, but I don't. I think when you're getting killed, it speaks volumes. Look, I know the goaltending, and I don't know what's going on tonight, but it hasn't been good, and that can just bury you. But they just haven't had pushback until like real late in games. And when you're getting killed, you probably lost the room. I think it all snowballed. It started with the obvious hole on defense. Then the team defense wasn't good. Carter Hart was upset in Boston, and he was half upset at himself, but he was upset with the guys in front of him, and he couldn't say it, but they knew it. If we know it, they know it. And it just snowballed. Even when they got better and started playing better, they look like the Hackstall or Gordon Flyers. It's like they've regressed.
Yeah.
You look at the other night when they won the game, and they had all these shots from the point. It was like Hackstall hockey.
Yeah, I saw that analytic.
Yeah, and it's like I'm not ready to let him go. But if you're asking me, do I think AV has lost the room? Actions speak louder than words. I think this team is gone.
There you go. All right. I actually think he lost the room sooner. Than the TK thing. Okay. When the team started the slide, okay, I wasn't hearing the right things from AV. And I kept hearing that, oh, the team's excited, we're excited, and we're a good team, and we're excited, and we're a good team, and we're excited. All right. Well, what are you excited about? Because clearly, I'm not seeing it. Because if this is what you're excited about, these half-butt excuses for effort for a 60 minutes of hockey, you're excited about that, and you think this is a good team, man. Isaiah's poked it right there, man. Actions speak louder than words, and this guy's actions are not matching his words.
The only thing is, I don't want to get lost on that, because to me it starts with Fletcher, and the players. You have to start changing things up before you take that other move. I think
it can be saved. I think it can be saved in that sense. Yeah. With a big shocking trade, I think it can snap the team back into reality. I'm not calling for AV to be fired just yet.
Right.
I don't think it's necessarily his fault. Like Isaiah said, it's snowballed away from him. And he's basically come out and said, hey, look, I need something. I need something else. We don't have it.
Right.
And he's pleading for something.
It's his job to figure out what the answers are, which is his way of saying, I don't have any.
Right. But at this point, I've tried moving around players. I need a new piece. I need a new pawn in the system.
Here's the thing I want to say, though. Here's the thing I want to say, and this is the thing. Number one, if you have all these guys waiting in the wings for our defensive depth, why aren't you playing them? Okay, that's the biggest thing right there. If you're touting all this depth, why aren't you playing them? Why are you still constantly putting the same guys in and night out? Okay.
But who are you going to play?
At this point, does it really matter at this point if you put Sam Moran in? What do you have to lose?
No. Yeah, I'm fine with that, but I thought you were referring to somebody like trying to get Cam York to turn pro. Or
no. You got Zumala, you got Wiley.
Anybody that's playing with the Phantoms right now, put him in. What do you got to lose?
That's a mistake. That's how you get.
I think you're going to hurt them.
Need time. They need time.
Okay.
What you're better off doing is trading them for Ryan Ellis with a first-round draft pick and maybe another roster player. In other words, if you want to accelerate the timeline, don't ruin the kid's development. Let another organization do that. I've seen that enough in my 50-plus years of watching the team.
All right. That's a good point.
I think that's true. I think that's the key piece here is a solid defender coming in. Ellis is 110 plus 110. And Bill Metzner and me talked for a very extensive time before the Devils game, when we were both there scratching our heads with all this. And I think that was to be a key piece because Sanheim, in my mind, Sanheim, Myers, and Zumala are all the same player. And that is that they're offensive minded, that they are they are big bodies, but they are not physical in a sense. I think you need a different dynamic. I think we got too much of the same dynamic, and that's the key. But one more point I wanted to clear up on that with Hackstall. I think they moved in the right direction to maybe get a whole change in that sense, but they signed the wrong guy for a head coach. In my mind, I was pulling for Chris Knobloch, who was an assistant coach here. But who coached that team that night that the Rangers won 9-zip?
Yeah, but that's
Chris Knobloch,
but
and that's one game. And that's one
they can't
game.
go from Hackstall to Knobloch. You know what I'm saying? You can't do that. You need.
I don't think you could. But I wanted to see him instead of Hackstall because at that time I was pulling for Knobloch, and I was excited when I saw his name on the press release, but it said assistant and not head coach.
Yeah, but it helps to have Connor McDavid to build your reputation.
Right, but he had a numerous number of players that came out of that Erie Otters organization. It wasn't just him. So not only could he kind of scout them and get them in, but he trained young, talented players like we have in our depth system here. But he trained those guys up. Now, obviously, Connor McDavid's a anomaly, but other players in that organization, he did a very good job at coaching up as well. But that's playing armchair quarterback now in a sense.
So
yeah, and they wanted Q, right? They wanted Q. They couldn't get him.
Yeah. So
right.
Let me ask you guys a question then. If you think that bringing the kids up, right, would hurt them in their development, okay, well then you're basically throwing in the towel. Then, I mean, you're going. I mean, help me to understand, please.
Okay, this is an area I agree with Ron Hextall. He said there's a difference between playing a kid who's like 21 versus a kid who's like 23 or 24.
Agreed.
So you have Lazinski and Allison. They're like men, okay? They played a lot of hockey and have had a chance to mature. They just need to get a little more acclimated to the pro game. You can foresee in a couple weeks when they get a little bit more of their sea legs. They're coming back from injury, both of them, okay? So those are guys that should be getting the time. But particularly, like I said earlier, goaltenders and defensemen need a lot of seasoning. You ruin guys. Think about all the guys in the league that got really screwed over by being rushed. Tyler Myers, to me, never reached his ceiling. They put him right out there. Luke Shen, Zach Bogosian never became the player I felt he could have been. Now, juxtapose that with the patience that St. Louis had with developing Alex Pietrangelo and how long that took. There's very few guys like Drew Doughty who can just come in the league and be great. Yeah. And Victor Hedman took a long time. Now, Victor Hedman's one of the top 10 players in the entire game, but it took a long time. So I think you have to be choosy about which players can skip that step. You look at Nolan Patrick, in my mind, he should have went back to juniors because he missed so much time. Yeah. And he also would have been really would have benefited from the World Juniors experience instead of being with the Flyers. Okay, and now Nolan Patrick reminds me a lot of Steve Mason. He's a bit of a prima donna, and I don't know if he's ever going to make it because I don't know if he's ever been really pushed the way he needs to. But not, to sidetrack. But yeah, I think those are the kind of players that have a little more seasoning and a little more physically mature.
Okay,
sure.
Hold on. I'm not advocating bringing in guys like Cam York. I'm not advocating that. But what I'm talking about is the fact that you continually have the same players going into the lineup every night and it's not working. Then why don't you at least put somebody in that could, like Sam Moran, pick somebody.
Well, Sam Moran's not an NHL player. That's the problem.
Prosser ain't the guy.
They don't have Prosser's a
34-year-old reprocessed member of the Wild.
So they reprocessed.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to say that.
And then you got a European League player like Gustafsson who should be over there, in Switzerland or something like that. So, I don't have a problem. They played Moran tonight. I don't know if he was supposed to be in the lineup, but that's fine. you're not who's coming out of the lineup. I think they're in a spot where most of the young guys are already in the lineup. Look at their lineup. You got Patchfish 22, Farabee 21, right? Konecki's 24, Provorov's 24. Same thing with Sanheim, and Myers is 24. So they have their young kids. They're already in the lineup. What you need to do is let go of veteran, sell off some of these kids. And look, I like Scott Lawton, but are they really going to sign him next year? Would you be better off moving on? Look, I like the player, but he's not indispensable. I think they need to shake things up with a trade that makes sense based on what we talked about earlier, was saying, okay, let's send a message A, but B, let's make a useful value trade to let everybody know around the league and mainly in the building that we're changing course. Yeah. And that's what they need to do.
Do you know exactly what happened with the Mike Richards and the Jeff Carter? And look, and this is what I wanted to make the point to earlier, and I'm just kind of got around to getting it out here. But, in the playoffs, Mike Richards established himself with the Flyers and was that leader and was that player. And what happened? They shook the team up by trading him and Jeff Carter out and brought a whole new wave of people into this team. Okay? And so that's what I mean by with Giroux. I would much rather see him try to get a cup somewhere, or Voracek, or a player like that.
I'm not married to Giroux. I mean, if they could trade him and get a decent value, the main thing is cap space. That's the biggest asset you can have right now. I'm ready to move on. Besides, this is Shankaturay's team moving forward anyway. And then they have to make a decision whether they want to pay him in his declining years. Because it's like, lather, rinse, repeat. I don't know. That's a whole other discussion. But it is Sean's team right now. And that's the way I look at it. They need a new voice. And the other thing we talked about yesterday on the show, because I don't want to deviate from what you're talking about, but I think it's germane. You think about the veterans they have here. Who had credibility when they came in? Pronger wins a cup, Hall of Fame player. Niskanen won a cup. Jaromir Jagr won a couple cups, was a Hall of Fame player. They don't have that guy, so you get the same the same old stuff, SOS, when you come back into the losing locker room, the same voices saying the same things, and the young kids looking, well, what the bleep? You never won anything. What the hell? He doesn't have any answers. And I think it means something. And that is why you have to change things out as much as anything.
So right on the head.
Yep. So that is the thing. I'm kind of in between both of you right now. I see your point, Isaiah. Okay, when they brought in Jagr was working out in the arena. He showed up early. He stayed late, and a lot of those younger guys followed suit. And a player on that team now that does that is Sean Couturier. If you go to practice, he is the last guy to come into that locker room when we're in there, when we were allowed in there to interview them before COVID. And, that is a leader in my mind. That extra work, okay, that Tom Brady mentality where you get guys in the offseason to come in and you work with your players and you show them how to be pros by leading by example, okay? I think Chuck Fletcher, in a sense, needs to make a big trade. Like we're saying here, so far, maybe he's brought in Kevin Hayes. Okay, but I think that was Elaine saying, I want this guy on my team. I'm your coach now. I want this guy. He's my guy from previous teams. Okay, that was more him. I credit that to. But everything else with Nate Processor, right? All these guys were guys that he already had in Minnesota. Okay, so like he keeps bringing back Chris Stewart, who I liked. He brought him back. Curtis Gabriel, he brought him back. AV didn't use him, but he brought him back. So I'm just seeing a recycled mess that he had in Minnesota. He didn't have any new ideas in a sense besides Matt Niskanen, and that only worked for a year. I want to see term. I want to see depth. And if we do sell Steel, I agree with you. I want to see some young players like Zumla, like Wyatt Wiley, but not now. I don't want to see them this early to hurt them. Okay. I want to see them with maybe 10 games left in the season, okay, where they can get a little taste
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
get their feet wet for next season.
Yeah. Okay. All
Yeah, I
right.
mean, I think you tried to get Jared Spurgeon, and most of the guys you're talking about, if you're talking about Minnesota Wild, are like
Recycle,
the character
recycle.
actors in a movie. I mean, if you're talking about the main support players and even the stars of this team, he really hasn't tapped into that, and
Right.
and I think it is well past time, and they have to do something. They can't, and we have one of the reasons Hextall got canned, besides the fact he was just constipated as a GM, was when that's really what it was. And he didn't take care of the goaltending, that situation when he had two guys coming off of injuries and it was actually count on Michael Neuvirth. I mean, you're fired right there. I said I was having a freak out at the beginning of the year. So he goes and gets who did he have? Pickard, Cal Pickard.
Like 7 or 8 goalies that year. Yeah.
That was the carousel year. That was just ridiculous.
And then when the team kept doing, which, oh, by the way, what they're doing right now, getting Schneidered, as Gene Hart used to say back in the day, which would be getting really killed, getting worked over, then you would bring up Tyrell Goldblum. They don't have anything. They have no move. They have no trump card, nothing, zero, nada. And they have to do something to send a message like, this will not stand. And right now, to just keep coming back and taking a beating. I mean, they're like battered wives out there. I mean, no offense, but I mean, that's what it's like. And if we're going and watching it, we're in the same boat.
Yeah.
It's more, isn't it feel like work watching them, like homework? I have a podcast.
Yes.
I have to watch it.
Yes.
It does
Okay,
kind of feel like,
them?
oh man,
No.
I have to watch. It's an
I have to write
hazard.
articles on this.
It's
Yes.
an occupational hazard. You have to show up for the game and report on it and look good and smile and everything while you're doing it too. You know what I mean? Yeah, all right, yeah. Okay, guys, I'll tell you what, man. I think we pretty much. I think we took care of things. I don't think we left any stone unturned in this show whatsoever. I think we nailed down exactly what the Flyers need to do, and if they don't do something tomorrow, then they have to be throwing in the towel and going for next year or draft picks or something. So
I think you're absolutely right, Stu. I think at this point you have to listen to your fans. And I was at the game against New Jersey, and the fans, the limited amount of fans, were just raining down the booze, and they did it. They've done it again tonight as well. From the little bit I saw before I came in here, and they're just letting the team and letting Chuck Fletcher know that they are totally dissatisfied with the way this team is right now. And I agree. Moving forward, it needs to be addressed. 8 a.m. tomorrow, you need to be on the phone and making some kind of a deal. Not a snap decision, but something that you've been palling over for a while. And get on that phone and do not get off with that GM until you get that player, that Ryan Ellis or whoever that you deem necessary that is going to come in and be that guy to make that first move to wake up this team and get yourself set. Maybe not this season to correct this season, but moving forward.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, my man. Well, listen, we were joined by a very special guest tonight, Isaiah. Man, thank you very much for sitting in. Thank you for bringing the truth.
Pleasure.
Thank you for spouting the truth. I mean, you are preaching to the choir here, my man, for sure. As you couldn't tell already, we're all on the same field here, so you know. Hey, man, how can we get a hold of you? Where can we get all your stuff? Where can we follow you? And where can we get your great show?
Hey, you can follow the O B Puckcast at O B Puck, at O B Puck on Twitter. We have a Facebook page. We have a YouTube channel, O B Puckcast. So make sure you hit that notification bell and subscribe. We're found on all kinds of platforms. Apple, I think we got 12 or 13 different platforms, including the one that I just mentioned. SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, Spotify, you name it. You're going to find the O B Puckcast. And if you want to yell at me, I'm Isaiah on Twitter at Isaiah, ISAIAH _520. Isaiah, don't forget the underscore 520 on Twitter. And we also have a we have a Gab account. We're trying to reach as many people as possible. So
Yeah, there you go.
we can be found on Gab. And yeah, it was
Super.
great being here. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Yeah, man. Listen, if you guys aren't listening to O B Puckcast, you're seriously missing out. These guys are the standard. These guys are where it's at. If you need to know about what's going on with the Flyers, you need to tune into O B Puckcast. So, man, always a pleasure. Love having you here. Thank you very much for being here, Lance, my man. How can we get
Yes,
a hold of you?
sir.
Got anything good coming up? I mean, you kind of dropped a few little hints there.
Yeah, I got a lot of stuff written down on a sketch pad, and with every passing game, it gets a little nastier. I don't know, but I'm trying to put out some good thoughts and try to be optimistic. But we'll see what the stories bring over the weekend,
Oh
and
yeah.
you can always get a hold of me. Shoot any questions you want for the show, and we'll try to discuss them here as well
Yep.
at LNGBASSIST. The number's 39 on Twitter.
All right. Thank you guys very much. This is the SteelFlyers All Sports Networks bringing you. Hit the like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at SteelFlyers52. And thank you all very much for joining us. And we'll see you guys on the next show.